This video recaps everything we learned, Unit 4, Lesson 1. To follow along with this video, you should open up the Makeup Nearpod that was in the same folder as where you found today's video. The first thing you have is a notice and wonder. This is the picture that I'm asking you to make a notice and wonder about, so please pause this video and complete the notice and wonder. There are a few key things that we talked about in class as we were discussing this image. First is we can see that temperature is measured in degrees Fahrenheit and in degrees Celsius. Degrees Fahrenheit and degrees Celsius are two different ways of comparing temperatures, much like we could measure distance in both feet and meters. If we were comparing the temperatures of Memphis, Tennessee and Bangor, Maine, we could either say that we wanted to compare the temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit, and we would say that 30 degrees Fahrenheit is warmer than 1 degree Fahrenheit. Because of course we know intuitively that 37 degrees is warmer than 1 degree. Now when we look at degrees Celsius, things get a little bit trickier. The reason being that 17 looks bigger than 3 at first glance. However, 3 degrees Celsius is warmer than negative 17 degrees Fahrenheit. And the reason why that's the case, and I might have said negative 17 degrees Fahrenheit, I meant Celsius. And the reason why that's the case is because 17 is a negative temperature. It is less than 0 degrees, which we're going to spend a lot of time illustrating today on a number line. But the takeaway here is that Memphis is warmer than Bangor, and we can prove that using both degrees Fahrenheit and degrees Celsius. Degrees Fahrenheit is what we use more often here in the United States, so it's probably what you're more used to. I'm going to skip to the learning target for today, which is I can use positive and negative numbers to describe temperature and elevation. So we have two topics, temperature and elevation. I just went over temperature a little bit, and we'll talk about elevation in a minute. So first, we went over an example together. The thermometer showed a temperature of 7 degrees Celsius one morning, and later the temperature increased 4 degrees. We can represent this change in temperature using a number line as shown in the picture. So we know that our starting temperature is 7 degrees, and I'm going to go ahead and label that here. We also know that the temperature is increasing by another 4 degrees. So I can start at 7 and count 1, 2, 3, 4. And I end up here at 11 degrees Celsius, my new temperature. You have a similar question here in 1 and 2, which you can click to on your Nearpod to give a try. It says here are two situations involving changes in temperature and two number lines. Represent each change on a number line and then answer the question. Question 1 says, at noon, the temperature was 5 degrees Celsius. By late afternoon, it had risen 6 degrees Celsius. What is the temperature in late afternoon? You can see that I've already written in the starting temperature, 5 degrees, the increase of 6 degrees, and the new temperature of 11 degrees. We have a similar situation in question 2. The temperature was 4 degrees Celsius at midnight, but by dawn, it dropped 9 degrees. What was the temperature at dawn? We see here that we started at 4 degrees Celsius. We dropped down 9 degrees, but this time we're venturing into the negatives. Our new temperature is negative 5 degrees. I encourage you to pause this video, give questions 1 and 2 a try on your own. I just summarized them for you, and then go ahead and move on to question 3. Once you've done questions 1, 2, and 3, you're ready to come back here to take a look at these notes. So we just talked about positive and negative numbers, and we're introduced to a number line that looked something like this. Notice that on our number line, as we increase or go up, our numbers get larger. So moving upwards is increasing. Above 0 is also where we see our positive numbers. So anywhere above 0 is positive. In contrast, as we move down past 0 on our number line, we are decreasing in value. And below 0, our numbers are negative. It's important to note that 0 separates our positive and negative numbers on a number line. This number line is vertical because it's moving up and down. We'll use horizontal number lines later in this unit. We went over a few examples of comparing numbers. For example, we talked about how -3 is less than +1. And we can prove that by taking a look at our number line. -3 and +1. We know that as we move up on our number line, our numbers are increasing in value. So if a number is higher, it's larger, lower is less. Similarly, if we were comparing two negative numbers, -1 is blank, then -5, what do you think is going to go in that blank? You might have guessed greater. -1 is greater than -5. And again, the reason why that's true is because we can see -1 above -5 on the number line. In other words, -1 is closer to the positive numbers than -5. At this point, we've talked about using positive and negative numbers for elevation or for temperature. And now we're going to move on to elevation. Take a second to look at this picture and see what you notice. There's a few things to talk about. First is that when we're using a number line to talk about elevation, the 0 on our number line is always going to represent sea level. So what is elevation? I recommend writing this in your notes. Elevation is simply the distance from sea level. Now, you might notice that we have positive elevations, like up here, 1,025. Those are elevations that are above sea level. So I'm going to go ahead and write it on my number line, which you might want to draw in your notebook, that my positive numbers are above, and I'll write SL for sea level. In comparison, below 0, I have my negative numbers, which are below sea level. And again, I do recommend that you have these notes in your notebook because having the number lines to go back to, both in the context of elevation and temperature, are going to be helpful. Your next step is to complete this question on Nearpod, where you need to work with the table that describes 7 different temperatures. Once you've completed that question, you've got a quick practice quiz, and then you need to go back into our classwork folder for today's exit ticket. If you need help with anything I covered in this video, please remember to come to office hours.